Hey there, this is the Small Fish, Big Podcast, a show for the gallus few who dream and do. If you're a small biz owner, a creative freelancer, or someone dreaming about leaving your 9-to-5, this is the podcast for you. Each week, I'll chat with an inspiring guest who will share their entrepreneurship story before we delve into a discussion about running a creative business. Thanks for tuning in. Hello and welcome to episode 24 of the Small Fish Big Podcast. I am your host, Rhiannon Loudon. If this is your first time tuning in, thanks for stopping by. This episode is going to be a little bit different than my usual format. I'm trying something a little bit different to see how it works, see how you guys like it. So stay tuned for the details on that. If you are a long-time listener, you've listened before, thank you so much for coming back. This is the point where I ask you to please subscribe to the podcast and write a review for me or share the fact that you are listening to the podcast. I do put a lot of time and effort into these, and it really, really helps to get the message out there and make sure that more and more people are able to get the benefit of tuning in and connecting to the community. So if you have a moment to subscribe, that way you will find out whenever new episodes go live, or if you could leave me a quick review, I would really appreciate your feedback. Also, if you tag me in your stories, if you're listening right now, you can tag me at smallfishbigpod. I would love to hear from you. I'd love to get to know some of my listeners, and I will share those posts in my stories as well. Right, so I mentioned I'm doing things a little bit differently this week. So the feedback that I got from a lot of you, and I put a few polls out over on Instagram, is that you really loved the sort of actionable tips and advice and ideas components of the podcast. I know you love the stories as well, and I promise I'm not getting rid of the longer format episodes where I interview guests. That will continue on, but I'm actually going to change it up. So every second week, I will have a guest on and we will do an hour-long episode where we will delve a little bit deeper into their story and the topic at hand. And on the other 2 weeks of the month, I will be doing one of these shorter episodes as part of a series called Branding Small Business. So these bi-weekly mini episodes, I'm going to try and keep them to 15 or maybe 20 minutes. I'm not the best at keeping things concise, but I'm going to aim for 15 to 20 minutes. So it's not a massive time commitment. I know as a small business owner, you wear a million hats and you might not always have an hour to listen to an episode. So the point of these is to give you as much valuable, actionable information as possible in the shortest amount of time possible, so that you can listen in, take a few notes, and turn the podcast off and get to work, do a little bit of homework and revamp different areas of your branding. So bi-weekly episodes, each one will focus on a different aspect of branding a small business. And basically they will be power lessons to help you improve your branding, chock full of actionable tips and advice, ideas, and motivation to get you started. So whether you're just starting your business or if you're still in the stage that you're dreaming about it, if you're thinking about a rebrand, or if you are an established business but you think it's maybe time to revamp your brand or revisit some of the things you've been doing, these episodes are for you. So, having said all of that, we might as well get started with episode 24, the very first mini podcast episode on the subject of branding small business. So I thought a good topic to start out with for our very first delve into these is finding your USP and finding the best way to communicate it to your audience. So many of you probably already know your USP is your unique selling point. It is what makes your business stand out and what sets you apart from the competition. Unless you create a very niche product or offer a very niche service, chances are you are not the only one doing what you do. There are probably other people that make products similar to yours or offer services similar to yours, and one of the most important things that you can do as a small business owner is really delve deep into what it is that sets you apart. And the second part to that is finding the best way to communicate that message with your audience. So you don't always want to be just saying, I do this, that's how I'm different. We need to find more creative ways of getting that message out and getting it out to the right people. So that is what this episode is all about. We will talk about the ways of identifying your USP, because that's not always easy. For a lot of us, when we start out our businesses, we might do this exercise, figure out what it is that makes us unique at that time, or what it is that we think makes us unique. But the more experience that you have in running your business, and the more experience you gain working with different people, maybe making different products, changing products to better suit your clients' needs, you might find over time, in fact, I'd be surprised if you didn't, that your unique selling points change. And maybe they are still in a similar family, but we might want to just revisit the idea a little bit. Or maybe you come up with some new ones that are, things that you didn't even identify from the start. So even if you've been doing this for a while and you identified those USPs at the start, it's great to just revisit that and make sure that they still make sense for your business and for your brand. You may know already that I do a lot of this work with clients, so whether it's through power hours or brand strategy sessions, or even through brand photo shoots, because obviously having those photos that stand out is a big part of this as well. This is something that I work regularly with clients on, and I work with clients all across the sort of creative spectrum, some product-based and some service-based, so I will try and give you examples from both sides so that this pertains to everybody. But where it really starts is thinking about your strengths. So let's use my photography, for example. So I'm a photographer. I can take professional pictures. That's great, but every other photographer out there, or most of them anyways, can take professional photos as well. Photography is quite an interesting one because you'll find that brand photographers specifically, and a lot of family photographers as well, their sort of main claim to fame, or the thing that they really push about themselves, is their ability to make people relax and feel comfortable in front of the camera. Now, in fairness, this is something that I talk about, and this is something that used to be kind of my front and center USP as well, until it was pointed out to me by my fabulous marketing strategist, Denise Strozal, have to give her a shout out here, that while I was, particularly good at this, and my client reviews showed that this is an area that I excel in, it's also an area that loads of other photographers claim to excel in too. So whether or not I offer a better experience in that regard than anybody else does, that doesn't really matter. If every photographer out there is claiming the same thing, I'm not doing anything to set myself apart. So that's not to say that I exclude that from my content. I do talk about my ability to make people feel comfortable. I do share those reviews where people talk about the ways that they could just feel like themselves. But I have expanded from that, so that is not a key USP for me anymore because it's not unique enough to me and my business. So what Denise helped me do, and similar to the kind of work that I help my clients do, is looking a little bit deeper and thinking about your own unique skill set. We all know as small business owners, we are our brand, and I won't be the first person to say that that is really our biggest superpower. I am the only me, so while other photographers might be just as talented or just as experienced, I'm the only person that offers my unique experience, and that will speak to certain people. Is everybody my ideal client? No. Some people might not like my approach, or they might not like my style, but there are people out there who do, and it's finding those people and communicating that message, reaching the right people through our branding. Now, to keep things fairly straightforward, I'm going to break this down into 4 categories for you. So we could easily subcategorize these. There are certainly more than 4 categories that we can look at when we're talking about USPs and the things that make your business and your brand unique. But in the interest of keeping things actionable and easy to follow, I'm going to focus on the 4 that I consider major ones for creative small businesses. So the 4 kind of aspects that we are going to look at are your brand personality, your style, your approach, and your experience. So let's start with the fun one first. Personality. So this ties in, of course, with the idea that you are your brand and you are the only you. That's your greatest superpower. I mentioned that already. Your personality is going to set you apart. And we talk a lot about brand personality, but I think for most of us who are solopreneurs or small business owners, your personality is knitted into your brand. You can't really separate the two, or it's very difficult to separate the two, especially in creative industries. And just being yourself goes a long way. It sounds like such a simple thing, but speaking from the heart, creating content that really shows who you are, not pretending to be something you're not. These are all fairly simple things, and they can be a little bit scary when we start worrying about coming across professionally enough or what people are going to think. But if you think about this in terms of friendship, there are people that we hit it off with, people that we feel are kindred spirits, people that just get us, people that we feel an instant connection with in our lives. And I think of clients that way. I know that the more of my personality I show, the more divide there's going to be between people. I'm going to get people who either instantly connect with that and think, yep, she's the kind of person I want to work with, she's the kind of person I want to follow. And on the other side of that, you're going to get people that go, she's not really for me, that doesn't really speak to me, I don't really feel like we'd get along. And that can be a scary thing. It's the same idea as niching down. It's scary when you know that the more of yourself you put on the table, the smaller you're going to make your ideal client base. But realistically, that's what you want. If me being myself is going to put somebody off, they're probably not the kind of person I want to work with anyways, because I don't want to pretend with my clients. I don't want to have to stop and think, ooh, how's this person going to react if I say this? Or what's this person going to think about that? I'm just going to be myself, and I'm going to draw in the kind of people that I love to work with and who will love to work with me by doing that. So sharing your personality, being as honest and as real as you can, will set you apart, and it'll also help you find the right kind of clients to connect with as well. And as I said before, there are other people out there who are doing what you do, and different personalities to speak to different people. So if I go back to my example as a brand photographer again, there are going to be people who are looking for that very traditional sort of posed headshot where they want to stand and stare at the camera. Maybe they have a white wall and they're sitting at their desk smiling with a laptop in front of them and a cup of coffee. There's nothing wrong with those kind of photos. Those work really well for lots of people and lots of businesses. But that's not really the approach I take. If you take a look through my brand photos, you'll mostly see people talking, smiling, acting really candidly, and that's the sort of customer and client experience that I want to give. That's what it's like to work with me. That ties into my style and approach as well, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But being yourself goes a long way in helping you stand out online. And as much as it's a little bit scary at first, the more you let that true you shine through, the easier it gets, I promise. Next, let's talk about style. So everybody has their own unique style, whether you are a product or a service-based business. Obviously, that narrows your target audience down a little bit. For example, if you create very contemporary jewelry, you are probably not going to appeal to somebody who only buys classic pieces and vice versa. So you already have an idea, I'm sure, about who your target audience is and what kind of people like to buy your products. But how do you get your style to stand out as a USP? So for a lot of people, just saying that you are a modern and creative designer or a traditional designer is not enough to really differentiate yourself, because there are probably hundreds, if not thousands, of others out there that would use those same terms. But if you get down into the sort of real creative aspects of it, so maybe there are 5 other jewelers in your area that all create industrial style pieces with concrete. So what are you going to do that sets yourself apart from them? Well, how about instead of just talking about your materials or your process or the same things that everybody's talking about, what if you talk about your inspiration? What if you share your story, the story behind your pieces? How is your journey different than the other makers who are creating similar products? And if you really break it down into the smaller components, and again, this all ties back into your own personal story, and bring yourself into it rather than just looking at the physical products you're making, that will really help you stand out. Now, that's not to say that you don't want to talk about your materials or your process, but this is just something else to think about, something else you can add to your repertoire, if you will, with your content, thinking a little bit more about your personal connection to your work rather than just the sort of physical aspects of it. And within that, within sort of each of the different niches in your industry, there are still probably some stylistic things that you do differently. So maybe there are other jewelers that are using concrete, but are they also incorporating the same themes or colors or patterns